Hello, everyone, and welcome to Struktur Series episode number 9. We're so glad you're here. And today we are talking with my colleague, John Lee, artist, designer, founder of ADIKT. And first of all, hi, John, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good to see you. Welcome. Hey, I want to just give us some stuff for the audience here and also for us so we can remember this is going to be an interactive session. So, John and I are going to be having a conversation, but we're going to be taking questions throughout the conversation. And so please, you can put information in the chat bar. So if you hit your chat button down below, all of us, you can get the chat on the side. And also where it says to at the bottom, there's a drop-down menu, say to everyone, so that you get the chat going to everybody, unless you want to talk to anybody individually. You can do that too. If you have any questions for John or I in the conversation, please put them in the Q&A. You can put comments in the chat. Let us know where you're from. Put your email for connection, websites, anything you want to share. It's a time to connect over there. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll post that at the end of this. We're recording this session, so this will get posted there and you can watch it again and watch any past ones. So I want to say a thank you to Karen Dunn and the KMD Pro team, Dan Bones for the opening animation, and Greg Brace for the original music that you heard at the beginning. And thank you to all of you for coming and being here today. Like I said, let us know where you're from. We're getting a few in here. We've got them already from across the pond in England. We've got Boston. We've got Oakland. We've got Southern Cal. We've got Utah. Keep it going. So welcome. I also just want to take a moment to say thank you to our sponsors, our friends at Cordura Advanced Fabrics, for this week's session. This month, they're celebrating a decade of durable denim. So congratulations. For over 10 years, Cordura has been collaborating with designers like us and brands and the Struktur community and beyond to explore, engineer, and encourage people in the denim world to think differently about what they create. Because as we know, we need everything to do more than ever and last as long as possible. And that's truly what makes Cordura really special. It's had a cult hero status with all of us, all types of people all over the world, because it truly does last and last. And that's a sustainable story that we really get behind, something that lasts a long time, not throwaway things, So now as Cordura continues to build upon over 50 years in the fiber and fabric business, they continue to innovate and they help us all design and bring our own ideas to life. We're excited to continue partnering with Cordura, and we're thrilled with their continued support. So thank you so much for being part of our community. And so today I'm really excited to talk to my design colleague, John. John and I worked together for several years, heading up design at the North Face, we were heading up key outerwear categories there for several years. And we both handled, I'd say, extremely important facets of the business where there was a lot of pressure and a lot to prove. And the collaboration across our teams was absolutely essential. And I have to say, I think we had a really rocky start working together. And a big part of that was due to my own fears and control issues, stepping into a new and a really heavy role. The North Face was growing. We had just hit the top outerwear company. And we were handling, most of the company's business was coming through our design doors. But over time, I think we really grew to respect each other as creatives and leaders and colleagues. And I think John is an amazingly talented and creative artist and an inventor. Ideas just kind of exude out of you all the time, and it's matched only by his passion and enthusiasm for creating something new, interesting, and beautiful. He tends to shun the spotlight, but he knows what he's good at, and he really believes in his ideas. But he's also incredibly kind, and he's a really generous person. And that's something that can be really rare to find in a really gifted artist. So welcome, John.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I could actually speak to, just the beginnings, prior to me going, moving to the outerwear team where, I began to work with Michelle. I was new to the whole director position, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't used to managing either. I had
Mhm.
my own little bubble, and then that was pretty much like the next step for
Yep.
me was to go to a bigger, category as outerwear, run a bigger part of the business, start designing for it.
Yeah.
And there was definitely a learning curve. I would say that, creatives in general, especially around, design, apparel design, it's quite competitive.
Yeah.
It's a very competitive field, right? And
Yeah.
we are very much, in a lot of ways like athletes, where we're always trying to, size up what we believe is a competition or whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
And in general,
Absolutely.
there's always that feeling out, right? There's always that, who is this person? Like, what does their work look like? Things like that, right?
Yeah.
What's their process like and things like that.
Yeah.
And over time, like to your point, it was just mad respect, just being able to
Yeah.
say like, wow, I'm learning a lot from this person. I'm really understanding how they're navigating, what they're doing. Even if you don't understand it, it's
Yeah.
that reverence and respect that you begin to have, and you're just like, wow,
Yeah.
okay, this is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that synergy just starts to form naturally sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a huge
It's
like,
true. It's true.
I know creatives that sometimes they just never quite clicked and they never
Yeah.
quite got along, and yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. And this kind of thing really happens at certain types of brands too, because I mean, we're coming from the outdoor industry, but it also, that was a time that fashion was really starting to merge, right? And the North Face was already popular in realms of, because of how it kind of came up into the hip hop realm and all of these things earlier on. It already started to have kind of a cult status growing.
mhm,
And there was an importance to it, and it was rising and growing really fast. And but it was still kind of a bunch of young renegade people running around just creating things in the office. And so I think
mhm,
what I think I could say hindsight is both of us came into managing the design for the company's most profitable and most visible categories, and feeling that pressure. For me, I don't know how it was for you, but it sounds like, I know you were coming from snow sports, but for me, feeling that pressure was palpable, was just that
yeah,
crushing weight of, oh my God, it's a lot of product. Each one sells a lot. It's
yeah,
very visible. And we're asked to do a lot of change to it.
yeah,
Would
yeah.
you say that was how it
Oh
felt for
yeah,
you?
very much so. Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. I was going from one season to now almost seen as four seasons sometimes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You definitely have to work at a really fast pace, make a call, make sure that the impact of what you're doing is well thought out, and yeah, you just have to, yeah, come up with
Yeah.
a game plan really quickly and execute it just as fast, and
Yeah.
not make so many mistakes in the process, right?
Right.
So
And have a vision, like
very
have a
much
point
so.
of
Yeah,
view, right?
yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah,
not just designing whatever. And I think
yeah.
that's where I think both of us were very strong in having a vision,
Hmm.
and I think that's where
Yeah,
some of that initial like rough start, you have a vision, you're working in a bubble, you want to create that vision. How do
yeah.
you let other people in? So yeah, I think I was thinking about that. I was kind of thinking about some of the things that in preparing for this interview, I was thinking about, what were the poignant moments where I really felt like we started to connect as colleagues and designers. And there were two that really pop up in my head. There's many, but there's two that to me really kind of broke the ice in a lot of ways. And there are these weird little these points that you would never expect. And one was when I think we were traveling to Asia. I think we were in China, and we were going out afterwards with some of our manufacturing colleagues out for a drink and whatnot. And I don't know how far in, a couple of hours in, we started talking about martial arts films. And, they were all very surprised at how much, because I was a martial artist and what I knew about that. And I remember you jumping in and we were all talking about Jackie Chan and Jet Li and whatnot. And it just was this moment of a lot of joy and a lot of like, oh, break the ice, understanding, getting to know each other, getting to know people, and why those types of things are really important for relationships. The other piece was when we were in the office at one point and we were hand sewing something, or we were like, you had to hand sew us something, or I had to, and somebody had thread, and we started talking about knotting the ends of the thread for hand sewing and the different types of knots that we had that our mothers had taught us, and we were laughing about it and showing each other how to do it. And that sticks in my head in a big way, because then I learned a lot about your mom, and what you learned from her.
Yeah.
And I want to go start there. I want to kind of start at the beginning and hear about your beginnings, migrating from Malaysia, like learning manufacturing from your mom, some of those. You want to dig in there?
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of other immigrants, on the way to America, I was born, and it was in a refugee camp in Malaysia. And, I thought I was the only one growing up, I was like, I'm the only one that this is happening to, right? Like,
right.
I'm in this new place. My parents don't speak English, and, I have to, I'm learning English from watching TV. And the more, I start looking around, I'm like, wow, this story is so common for immigrants in general, right? And so it's, the older I get, the more I realize, and I meet people with very like stories, right? And a lot of them, it's so familiar. Parents grew up in Vietnam. Basically, we're Chinese, but they grew up in Vietnam, and then essentially because of what was going on over there with the war and the aftermath of it, they were like, hey, better life for my children. Let's try to get to America and figure that whole thing out. And in the process, it's like, long boat ride, long journey. And, we end up in Malaysia, where we're waiting to get visaed. We end up in Montana, where my folks were just like, it's way too cold, right? Going from tropical South Vietnam, a place called Sok Jung, to then all of a sudden to, Washington. My folks are just like, it's way too cold here. We need to move. We need to, like the birds, go down south, right?
So you went to Montana and then Washington?
No, we lived in Washington, actually. I'm sorry, not Montana, but Spokane, Washington. And then we traveled down south from there. We didn't last more than like a year,
That's
and my parents were like, we need to get to the Bay Area.
Mm.
I was actually, the reason why Montana was in my head was just spending time with Conrad Anker, being out there. It reminded me of that period of my childhood, right? And I only saw the images, right? But they're just so familiar, just the way the streets looked, everything. And as it just came to my mind. It's like, us ice climbing in Bozeman, Montana. And that just reminded me of, our early beginnings in the United States. But
it's great up there, isn't it? Yeah.
It's amazing. It's a pretty it's a very
cold.
mystical place. It's cold, but I mean, I've never camped in a place so comfortably.
Right. Yeah.
But from there we ended up in the Bay Area, where we just started off in Richmond, and then went to school in Berkeley, kind of just jumped around the East Bay quite a bit. And it was it was great. I mean, my mom manufactured dresses for Jessica McClintock in East Oakland, California.
Oh, I didn't
when
know
I was growing up.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Jessica
like
McClintock.
some Saturdays, some Sundays, she would just take me to work with her. And, my mom, she worked so hard. She was like 7 days a week, all the time.
Wow, yeah.
And just had the television on, and she was just like, sewing and just manufacturing when she could. And I just recall like massive bags of just dress parts, right? And yeah, my job sometimes was just to shove the boning into the corsets or whatever it may be, right?
Oh
And I didn't
man.
even know what these things were, but my mom would just be like, "Hey, you're not doing anything. Watch some TV. Help me out. Here you go. Here's a big bag. Try to get through it." And I was just like, "Okay," and it was great. I mean,
Not too many. Not too.
I had it, so
Yeah, not too many guys grow up knowing what boning is.
yeah, yeah,
You
right.
know what I mean?
Right now I got rolls behind me,
If
so
anybody's
yeah.
curious out there, it's like the hard little plastic stuff that goes into corsets and dresses, like especially the sleeveless ones, that helps keep them up. They don't stay up
Yeah.
on their own. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Just a way to
wow.
build structure, right? So
Right. Right.
to something that's very soft and malleable in my head. So I just equate it to like, tent poles as well,
Oh,
inside
yeah.
of the, tent, and so I think of it that way sometimes. And
Yeah.
boning's a little bit more flexible, but at the end of the day, it's the same premise in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. So that was kind of the beginning of just, that's me understanding and learning a little bit about manufacturing and what it takes.
Mhm. And this was
Yeah.
probably 80s, 90s that she was doing this.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. That,
definitely. And, it was great. It was awesome just to see it take off and, see the amount of operators that started to increase and then seeing the influx, right? The opposite of what happened to the industry, right? It started to decline. My mom started to become a prototyper instead.
ah,
And then so that
mm,
model began to shift, but you could already see manufacturing was leaving the
mm-hmm.
East Bay, right?
Yeah.
As well
Yeah.
as the United States. And
Yeah.
so it was humbling and interesting to be a part of that and to see that. But the sewing machines, the overlocks, the single needles, the jukies, the
Right.
the auto button machines, like those are all around.
Mhm.
Those are like the toys, right? That were
Yeah.
around me, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And you get to, witness that. I think I talked with an interview with Tracy Cottingham, who, a designer who worked up, she's older than us. She's been around much longer. And she was talking about how things declined through, the 70s and 80s, and then the 90s when she was in Nike and whatnot. And
yeah,
that story of watching manufacturing leave, especially now being in the Bay Area and seeing how much of it is vacated, and what that has done for the communities around here, that was their main source of income and work. It
yeah.
sounds like that was the case for your mom too. So,
Yep,
yep.
yep,
Yeah.
definitely.
So how much did you visit those? Like, you said on the weekends you would go, but
Yeah, definitely. And then summers, right? Summers where I
yeah,
didn't have summer school or whatever it was, I would always, yeah, I'd be down there. Yeah. It was just always like,
that's what you did.
walk down to the liquor store to try to get some candy or something like that. That was like, that was as, that was as big as it got for me, and just watched a lot of TV and just my mom every once in a while would try to give me a task or two to do. And if I did it well after one or two, she would continue having me do it. If I had to fix it, she'd be like, nah, that's probably not your thing. Right. So it was just like, it was like buttonhole machine.
I was
And
going to ask.
yeah, but no way was I like serging or doing anything like that, or like single needlework or anything like that. It just, my needlework was not there. And yeah.
Oh,
I
that's cool.
I proved that takes a while. That takes definitely a while. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
so then what did you do from there? Like, you also got really into art.
Yep,
Like,
yep,
how did
definitely.
that come in then? Where was that piece? When did that start to infiltrate for you?
I was always that kid in class like drawing, right? So
Yeah,
for me, it was definitely pop culture, right? Like
yeah.
watching TV all the time, learning English from watching TV. You had Care Bears was my favorite. No, I'm just kidding. I did
I
like
was going
Care
to
Bear,
believe you.
but no, I liked it because of all the character development, right? They all had their own little icons and stuff like that. That's awesome.
I
But
thought you
like
were going to say
Smurf,
Transformers.
no,
Yeah, yeah,
well, that's later, right?
yeah.
But
Right, right.
Smurfs was great as well. You know, yeah, it was just all of them, and then Transformers, of course, when Japanese animation kind of made its way, and there was like Thundercats and all these like very like
Right.
influenced
Yeah.
Japanese style like kind of cartoons that started hitting. There's
Love them.
Transformers, Robotech,
Yep.
yeah, just all of them. I was glued. I was
Yeah.
like sold, right? And that just parlayed into comic books, right? Finding
Right.
the most amazing comic book stores, and all I wanted to do was just draw comic books and characters, and like the character development started, right? um I used to sit there, and you know, I was into Dungeons and Dragons, you know, as
Yeah.
well. It's like role playing games, and there's this one kid. He was super influential in warping my mind there. He used to, you know, we were at a school in Berkeley called Jefferson,
Oh,
and a guy by the name of Malcolm, he would just show up, and he would just sit down with us, and he would draw. He would On a page, he would just draw your own character, but he'd first ask you like what your, you know, what your race or creed was, and you got to pick these like mythological, like, oh, I want to be an elf mixed with a barbarian or whatever it may be, right?
yeah. Yeah.
And then he would draw these weapons, right? He'd make you roll these dices to see, you know, like how much, how like the funds that you would have. And so it taught you like all this accounting, like really early, like, you know, like
Ah, yeah.
banking and accounting. And it
Yeah.
was just all these things. And he had these elaborate sketches, and he was like my hero, right? He would just
Hmm.
like, just taught me this whole Dungeons and Dragons world. And, you know, it just sit there, just draw for days and try to draw like him, right?
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah.
and you never like you realize how influential certain individuals, and we were never in touch. He like just like would
No.
come, hang out, and then leave.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm in touch with the guy, but you know, at the end of the day, if anybody knows a guy named Malcolm from, you know, Berkeley, let me
Malcolm
know,
from
because
Berkeley.
I would like to say thank you.
Yeah,
But
these
in
these
general,
people that just drop into your life and make an impression, and
yeah,
just there they sit in your psyche, in your memory.
yeah,
So
yeah,
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 cool. So did you go to school for art or illustration or whatnot, or did you just learn it
yeah.
all?
I didn't actually. I mean, I loved art class.
Yeah.
I always got along with, you know, my art teachers, because they were just like, kid can't read, but yeah, he could draw. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And that was pretty much it. It was, for me, literature wasn't high on my list. It was like
Yeah.
I just tend to excel when it came to math and
Yeah.
art. And so
Yeah.
those are my two things. Really like science too, but in general, those are the things I went deep on. Yeah.
I find that to be the case for a lot of art, really creative, artistic people. You know, guys, especially, I think, because of maybe how school may be set up and whatnot, but that a lot of the communication and reading and literature, like a lot of that comes through visually for a lot of
Hmm.
the people that I've grown up knowing. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you know, so um, all right, we're gonna jump ahead from there then. So how'd you start working on this? How'd you start, like, then how'd you make the jump? Yeah,
Um,
starting to
yeah,
work. I mean, was the North Face your first
yeah,
gig?
yeah. North
Yeah.
Face was my first gig. You know, fast forward, you know, started to go to school at Cal State Hayward, and it
Mm-hmm.
was really just to make my parents happy, like,
Yeah.
because I really didn't want to go to college. You know,
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, there's not much for me here. I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna work at a car audio shop my whole life and just make art, right? And that's essentially what I thought I would end up doing. And
Hmm.
I just started. So, you know, like I did all the prerequisites, things like that. And then I met the art teachers out there, the professors out there, and they were just awesome.
Hmm.
And so I just started painting a lot, oil painting
Ah.
especially. And so I just really gained a huge passion for that.
Hmm.
So I started painting more and more. Um, and in that painting class, I met a woman by the name of Liz Green. and she's an amazing oil painter, amazing artist. And we got to talking, and yeah, she was just like, I asked her, she asked me what I did, and I told her I work on cars, at Circuit City. And I asked her what she did, and she was like, yeah, I'm a graphic illustrator for the North Face. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Because growing up in the Bay Area, North Face was like that product that you couldn't get, right? It was like the
Yeah.
really nice product, amazing. It was just like this,
Right.
high price point pieces that really my parents couldn't afford.
Yeah.
And so all the cool kids had it, right? And so in my head, I was just like, North Face, oh my gosh, I love the North Face. I was just like, if there's ever a job to sweep the floors or anything, just get me in that
Totally.
building. That'd be
Totally.
awesome. I would just love to see how it all works, right? How things get made.
Right.
A week later, yeah, it was interesting. She hits me up, and she's just like, my boss is going on maternity leave, and we need a graphic illustrator to just jump in and sketch. And it's a
Mhm.
lot of busy work. It's not, design or anything like that. It's just take a prototype or a drawing and make them consistent. And that's it.
Ah,
It's like redraw the designer's sketches.
okay.
And
Huh.
so I was like, she was like, can you get your portfolio together? And I was like, yes, I can. Let's do it. And so she got me an interview the next day, and I just walked in with a, a really bad
I was
portfolio.
going to ask you, what
It
did you
was
put in
so,
there?
it just was not curated. It just had like
Right.
hand drawings. It had everything, just like mashed in, right? It was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, it was, I had no idea what to do. So I just threw everything, all my work in. And yeah, I mean, I think we, her boss and I just, Beth Kepler, we hit it off, and Beth was just like, hey, when can you start? You have the skills to
Nice.
do the job. So when can you start? And I was like, I could start today. So
Ah,
it was pretty awesome. And I think, yeah, that was pretty much it. I just kept working. And it was through the marketing team that we
mm,
were budgeted, but yeah, we just kept working, and
that's
anything.
interesting.
I was just like, yeah, I found myself going from designer to designer, and I was just like, I could draw anything. Just give it to me, and you get
Yeah.
all these busy designers, and they're just like, here, sketch this. And I'm like, cool,
Yeah.
cool. And so I just had stacks and stacks of work, and I just found that to be like the job security is if I'm staying busy, they're not going to get rid of me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I went through that same thing at Columbia too. When I started as an intern at Columbia Sportswear a few years, several years before. And the
Mhm.
same kind of thing. If you walk in with that, here's an opportunity. I'll do anything anybody wants me to do. I run around, help all the designers, and you just make yourself available. Like
Yeah.
you seize the opportunities and you become indispensable,
Yeah.
through
And that's
multiple ways.
That's
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So that's how you got in. I think I want to take a moment to kind of break us up at the halfway point here and go through the poll. We have some poll questions that are about doing a creative project. So this is going to lead us into where I want to talk next.
Okay.
So I want to get a sense from the audience too of how people tackle in creative projects and whatnot. And I think it looks like we can do it too, John. So
Yeah.
can you see it there? Yep.
Yeah, I could see it.
Okay. First one, question one, how do you start a creative project? And multiple choice. You can choose whatever you want. Do you just start sketching? Do you just dive right in, writing, building, crafting, whatever anybody does? Do you dive into research? I'm wondering which ones I'm going to choose here. Do you build inspiration boards? Do you just sit down by like planning it out, timeline, plan, like, mapping out how it's all going to go first? Or do you meditate? Do you take walks, hikes, bike rides, travel, go places and kind of fill up, or clear out, you build a team. Some people are team oriented. So you just start building people around you to collaborate. or do you just go play? What are some of yours?
Yeah, I would say all of the above, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
it really depends on what project, right? If we're
Right.
talking ADIKT, my process for ADIKT has been really quick. So for me, it's always I've set the goal at 2 concepts a week, built. And that's what my goal was when we started ADIKT, was, okay, we can speed this up, right? Always being slightly frustrated about how sometimes conceptualization, things like that, move a little slower, right? So in general, I would say if it's about ADIKT, I sketch really quickly on like a napkin or like a little piece of paper or a Post-it, get that concept just to the point where I don't need to have everything figured out. I think the process in general will lead me to the build and then what I need in terms of materials, equipment, things like that to get the job done. And then I just move forward. And then in the building process, I learn there's definitely some things that I've done to really mitigate not getting to the end goal, because definitely at the beginning it was a little rough sometimes. But in general, writing, like sketching, writing, building, crafting, it's like really quick, and that's very ADIKT in a sense. But if you're leading a team or you're working for a big brand or even a startup, you really do have to do the homework, the research, the points of inspiration, all those things. Can't be so sporadic. You do need to fill up on that. You need to get inspired. You need to make sure that your customer or your enthusiast or the person you're building it for actually needs this item, needs this product.
Right.
You need to make sure that there's a necessity for it out there. It's a lot of times, most of the time, it's not the time to experiment, right? There's a place and time for that, right? But if it comes to, for example, the outerwear division that we were working on, which was the majority of the North Face's revenue, you can't make that many mistakes, right?
Nope.
So in general, you're not in innovation, so you have to taper back on that. And so
playtime is very short. Very short and very focused.
Very much so. And so your margin for error decreases, right? And I mean, more than anything, that's what ADIKT was about, was just this rabbit hole of just building and creating at a rapid rate and pace, where you don't have to talk yourself out of things, right? And that tends to happen sometimes from a creative perspective, is you can spiral and get to the point where you just don't want to do anything. And I get that way sometimes. If I overthink something, I tend to wonder why it is I'm even thinking about that or doing it. And so
I want to
a lot
talk
of the
more.
concepts but a lot of the concepts you see are just way out there.
It's super cool. I want to talk even more about ADIKT in a bit too. So I want to make sure we touch on that some more, because it's really important. Really important points in there, those differences between, your own type of project like this and a big, company or a project that involves a lot more people and revenue or things riding on it. So now, once the project is going and happening, how do y'all know when a creative project is done? And that too is going to depend on the project too. When it's approved by bosses or clients, right? It's done. When the final tech pack or product sample is delivered, when it goes to press, manufacturing, production, everybody is kind of a different point. They might let it go or consider it wrapped or done. When it's released to the public, when I decide it's done, or it's never done, which there's a bit of that too, where things are never quite done. But when I get paid, so this also includes like freelance and lots of different types of creative work. So you want to weigh in on that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say, again, all of the above. No, I'm joking. I would say when it gets, when folks are using it, right? When folks are like, we're in this world where we create product that can impact lives, things like that. And so for me, a product's done when folks are enjoying it, they're using it, and it works, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not done when you put it out there prematurely and it's kind of failing. People aren't liking it too much.
Right.
Let's do a 2.0 version, or let's fix that problem,
Yeah.
right? And so it doesn't ever feel done sometimes when you create something and out of the floodgates, there's some issues with it. And
Yeah.
that's okay. It's okay to make some of these, understand that there are mistakes that are made, and then you learn from them and you improve upon product, right?
Yeah.
You know, a
Yeah.
lot of our favorite products weren't perfect out the floodgates, right?
Yeah.
It took a
Yeah.
while. It took some refinement.
And I think that's a key thing to bring up for all of us, especially the newer people getting into creative work, where you want everything to be perfect. It gets
Mhm.
it gets precious, or it gets you don't want to release anything until, and it's a living, breathing process, right?
Yeah.
You can release something too early when it's not ready,
Yeah.
and that there should be checks in place to keep that from happening. But there are times when things just have to be done, and you can fix it later, or whatnot. It's good enough or whatnot. There's a fine line there.
Yeah.
So with that, then how do you measure the success once it's done? How do you and the audience, how do you measure the success of a creative project when it's complete? There are some people say, like, I think we were reading, I read a lot of quotes by Rick Rubin, the music producer,
Mhm.
that one of his quotes I really like, and I'm going to butcher it here, but it's something about, once it's out in the world, you're successful. If once you've released it, you're successful. Because a lot of times people put a lot of success on the next pieces here that I've put in there. So he would say, once you've released it and it's out there, you're successful. You've completed it. So that was one perspective. What we just talked about now, when it's released and I see it exist in the world, that's what we were just talking about. When people are using it, when you see it walking around the street, or people listening to it, or you see it being used, that is for me, that's I see that success. I may not have thought the product was perfect, or there were things I wanted to do different, but somebody's using it, they're happy, they love it. That's a success in my eyes. For some people, it's like it sells a lot, sells a ton, right? Like that's their measure of success. For other people, it's do I get paid a lot? Was that a successful project for me? It's like,
Royalties. Yeah.
well, boy. When it receives recognition, awards, press, celebrity endorsement, I know that's a pitfall in kind of our area, where awards and endorsements like that can feel great, or just like kind of empty. And that happens in every industry, every type of industry. When the team feels great about it, like, how does the whole team feel when something has been completed, and how do they feel about how they worked on that? Or a lot of, this is a big one I know people talk about, is when I feel like I've created something of real meaning or impact to somebody, or the world. Want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah. I would say, yeah, when it's released and I see it existing in the world, I feel like that goes hand in hand with, the impact, right? If you see folks wearing your product, you don't have to stop them to ask them if they like it or not. It's on their back. They're actually there. That's the thing about apparel. It's like, it's
Right.
folks can choose so many other things to wear. And if they're wearing one of your designs, you know that it's impacting. And that's the beauty behind it, right? It's
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
And that's not, it's not, more than anything, Michelle, like, we've created styles that have just like sold out the door, right?
Yeah.
And it's not always your favorite design. It's not always the one that you
No.
personally like to see on people, right?
Right.
But you have to also understand there are particular reasons why, right? And it could be price point, it could be feature set plus price point, it could be value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some folks go after that, right? But in general, it may not be the one that you have in your closet that you're proud to take out and wear, but that's okay. To each
Yeah.
their own, right? And
Right.
we create, as creatives, a lot of times we're not going to always put out one hit wonders, right? And things like that. It's like,
Yeah.
you just got
Yeah.
to put it out there, and some folks are going to really love things and gravitate towards it for a particular reason.
Right.
And it's not for you to really decide, right? The
Yeah.
beauty behind it is put it out there and let everyone figure it out on their own, you know?
Yeah, and that goes across. I mean, we talk a lot about both design and music and other types of, creative media and visual arts. We have acting on here as well. And it's the same type of thing, like it's all subjective. I mean, fashion and apparel is very subjective, and so is music. That's why they really go hand in hand. It's like it's all about personal taste and, offering options and whatnot. I mean, there's how you feel as an artist and what you feel good about putting out there, but then there's also what you put out and how it makes other people feel. And that's where that interaction with, the person that you're creating this, who's going to use it and experience it and love it, right? So, all right, let's get the results back. We have multiple choice here, so people chose them all too. So it looks like on the first one, yeah, just start sketching and research where your top are the top ones. But then also doing physical things. I think people, like especially in the outdoor industry, we're really prone to being outside, doing activity to help us think and whatnot. So I can really see that. So yeah. And then on number 2, when it's released to the public, it's never done. What do you think about that one? It's never done, because it does feel like in our industry, like in all of me, you're just, as soon as you're done, you're kind of like, okay, I'm over it and I'm on to the next thing, right? I want to redo it. I want to make it better next time, right? If we get that chance. I think
That's very much a creative mentality, right? It's like we've all done it before, where you're working late night, you feel like you finished a project, or whether it's a painting, or drafting a pattern, or draping something, or putting that last stitch in a garment. But at the end of the day, it's like you feel really amazing when you go to bed that night, right? And then you wake up the next morning and you're just like, oh gosh, all you do is nitpick it, right? And all
Yep.
you do is like want to do it better, right?
Yep.
And it's that kind of void, that kind of like, eeriness the next morning, when you're like, for a second there, I felt really, really complete. I felt amazing. And then you,
Yeah.
you wake up and you're just like, I could do that so much better.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you're just like, yeah.
Totally.
So I get it. I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you measure the success? Yeah, when it's released out into the world. And same thing, I chose this one as well, as like, I feel like I've created something of real meaning or impact. And I think that really speaks to the fact that as creatives, we want people to really experience with some joy the things that we do, and we want to be responsible with it. We want it to make a positive impact in the world. That's one of the biggest things I hear from creatives. So I want to move into talking about now finding your identity as an artist, especially working with these big companies, but not just there. How important is having an identity as an artist, and how do you find your own identity?
Yeah, it's always been a tough one for me, I think, in general. I think that for brands, I've always been able to help and contribute to certain brands that I admired or gravitated towards. But it was also me putting myself into the athlete's shoe, or the super users, or this core consumer shoe.
Right.
And so a lot of times I'm not designing for myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm not branding myself. I'm not designing for myself. I'm not doing any of that. I'm really catering, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. That's great. That's how I was able to learn all these things. That's how I was able to get my hands on all these technologies. Cordura being one of them, of course.
Yeah.
And being able to see all these amazing textiles, and all these tools that allow you to execute these things, all these future methods of make, things like that. you just see it at a rapid rate in our industry, right?
Right.
Everyone's coming to you, showing you all these things. I would have
Right.
never been able to get any of that and understand all the possibilities, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah. So in terms of identity, working for a big company, sometimes there's a lack of identity there for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some of my earlier work was very graphic driven,
Mm-hmm.
where I combined graphics and
I remember.
apparel.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was just drawing all over it, and it was super creative. And then I had realized it wasn't effective. It wasn't efficient. It was kind of crashing the back end. It was costing a lot to accomplish, and I just just was almost deemed like there's a lack of reverence for everyone that was going to build it behind me, right? It was a little reckless, right?
Yes.
And it was
Very
humbling to
frustrating.
like, yeah, it
I
was
did the
very
same
humbling
thing.
to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's humbling, right? And then you
Totally.
start to realize, right, and you start to understand those things, understand why some of your designs aren't hitting cost or things like that, right?
And it's an interesting thing to be in that position where you have an idea and you're telling people what you want to do, and then they do it. It's an
Yeah.
interesting sense of like, oh
Oh
my
yeah.
God, I have a responsibility here.
Yes.
Oh, this
Yes.
kind of throws a wrench in the machine, and
Right.
taxes, overtaxes the machine. I definitely did that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
but you clearly also, I mean, I know your graphic background as well, and as an artist, but to me, since I've known you, you clearly have had an identity as a designer that was distinctly yours. And I think sometimes we just develop that without knowing. And then maybe we come to it later and realize, oh, we have this, or we're known for this, and you kind of slide into it as your thing. Were you aware of any of that, or when did you become aware of what your look was, your identity as an artist, or what you loved, what people
Yeah.
saw when they saw your work, or how they felt
Yeah.
it was yours?
I would say I started to, I mean, when I left the North Face to go work on the innovation team,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely began to develop what I wanted to see on people and folks, right? And I started to develop just the whole premise of like taking, this technical aspect, all the technical design work that I've been doing, taking fashion, which I love, and I'm not saying fast fashion, I'm talking real fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then just really pushing that all into the future, right? And kind of just mixing it up and kind of just pulling on those levers and allowing that to kind of drive, um, be the catalyst to kind of drive a lot of vision work that I was doing for my own personal brand. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that wasn't easy to really, it's not easy to just like put yourself out there, right? and
Right.
and for me, Addict was to do that, but I would, yeah, it was just interesting, and it just became this experiment that just kept spiraling, and I just kept building, and all I wanted to do was just build more and build more, and then just experiment with things, and just at least just inspire, at least if anything, right?
When did you
um,
start doing Addict?
when I
Right
left,
away. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. So moved out to Vancouver about 2.5, 3 years ago,
Okay.
actually,
Mm-hmm.
about 3 years ago. And during that time, it was when, the North Face had, you know, um, told everyone that they were going to move to Boulder, Colorado,
Right.
right? And
Right.
during that time, had to make a choice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Boulder or Vancouver, and Vancouver had Lululemon, where Brenda was entertaining the concept. My wife Brenda was
Yeah.
entertaining the concept of getting out there, and
Yeah.
so we decided to make that happen. We were just like, okay, let's move out there. Um, I will, and for me, it was like 50-50. I would spend 50% of my time working on contract work to keep the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll spend the other 50 to kick off, what is this brand experiment called Addict, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's when it happened. And just all I wanted to do was just build this collection and just keep building and keep building. And I had all these concepts and ideas in my head over the, what was it, like 15 to 17 years of my career, where I was just
Yeah.
like always, it just wasn't right for a well-oiled machine, right? It was
Right.
just primed and right for this single person in a room with just the aspiration of just like building and building and building,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it was just one of those things, like, you know, having these discussions around modularity and like transformative, like, you know, pieces and things like that, and
Yeah.
versatility in general. I can't,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it just didn't work, right?
And if you go, I mean, we've been posting a lot of stuff about it. I think your Instagram feed for that really shows for the audience to see. That's where you see just tons and tons and tons of what you've been working on shown in a really wonderful way. And you have a partner that came in to help you do that,
Yeah,
right? To
yeah.
kind of get
Hmm.
it out there, because you are not a big self promoter guy.
Yeah,
But this is,
yeah.
it's beautifully shown, and it really speaks very much. Like when I first saw it pop up, I just found it, you know, a couple of years ago or a year ago, or I don't remember, really recently. And I was like, that, yeah, oh yeah, that makes sense. You know, even down to like, you've got some that are like, you know, like dragon tail, stegosaurus, you know, and I can't remember which one that, I mean, you've got amazing things on there, from bags to,
Hmm.
you know, the outfits, modularity. I mean, a lot of the stuff that, you know, we would be inspired to work on,
Hmm.
in outerwear, and a lot of the technical stuff, but yes, you can't do so much of what that is. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a pretty big paradigm shift, right? To
Yeah.
go from, you know, full garments to now dissecting the garment into thousands of pieces, or like, you know, 100 pieces or whatever you might do, and start taking on the Lego mentality of like just little parts, right? The sum of all parts kind of combine and create this thing. And so,
Yeah.
and I go back and forth, right? Sometimes I'll build a whole garment. It's a little bit more straightforward, a little bit easier to digest. There's always some type of little twist or hidden feature that I like to focus on. But in general, yeah, it's the ability just to break apart the way we think about garments and wear it differently, and be able to not, for me, the system is extremely important, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so, you know, when you look at a lot of the garments, they're it's simplistic in its trim set, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
actually like a very simple bill of material, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not heavy on the trims, right?
Right.
And those are things that I'm constantly trying to coach my design team on, is you don't need these extravagant trims to make your
Right.
design happen, right? You
Right.
can go through an exploration about how many configurations a snap or a buckle has. And if you just don't change that buckle or that snap, now it all connects somehow or some way,
Yeah.
even in a way that you would never imagine it would, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so as long as you just never switch out that snap, and you use it on every single one of your designs
Right.
moving forward, it will work. It will
Yeah.
naturally start to work, and you'll start to see these patterns happen, and
Yeah.
these locations of connection points, right?
Yeah.
And that's just what ends up happening. It's quite interesting. And then when you start taking all those separate parts and you start creating new outfits, it's quite interesting. And you go through that,
Yeah.
which I think is the fun part. Then you start to
Yeah.
play with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The modularity, the transformerness of it. I mean, it's so right on target. I mean, it's a future, you know, and it looks really cool. But yeah, working with the small bill of materials, like, we understand the efficiencies of that as well,
Yeah.
and how everything works together. So everything you've been doing is prototype right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
None
Yeah.
of those are
Yeah, they're one-offs or two-offs or whatever it may be. You know, sometimes I've been cutting twice because I find that I do mess up quite a bit, and and it just helps to have another set sometimes. So I'll either build two, and if it's a really difficult project, I'll only end up with one, and then one that's like learning, like what did I
Yeah.
learn from, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's interesting, yeah, because
Yeah.
a lot of times the orders of operation aren't, I don't plan it out. You know what I mean? It's just in my
Yeah.
head as I'm cutting the pattern. And
Yeah.
so I'd realized my process of cutting two to get to one sometimes. If it's two, then in my head it all worked out. If it's one, I didn't work out certain things, and I need to improve on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do
love
have
it.
a way to get rid of the scraps and things like that, which I also tend to. I have this huge bin where I just put all my scraps, and then that becomes another project at the
Yes.
end. And
Yeah. I love that.
so I do,
Yeah, that's early stuff we talked about in terms of sustainability and reusing, or using as much of, the projects of one pattern piece, or trying to use as much, no waste. We, kind of hitting on that. So, hey, we have one question. We're running out of time because it always goes fast. But we have a question from Neil Monroe here.
Neil,
it says,
that's my mentor.
Yeah. Our old boss. Great to see his name here. Great to see you, Neil. How do you define circularity, John? That's exactly what it says.
Circularity. He's always throwing these really difficult. I would say, circular systems in general do exactly what they do. I mean, you're able to start, and there's very little footprint, and you're able to create a product that essentially can go back to where it came from, right? And so it is just that, it's not recycling, because that ends up in, that has to be processed. But I think there's ways to definitely design things and be able to build things for deconstruction, be able to build things in a way where, it's not as bad for the environment in general, I think number one, I mean, we're just, and that's when you get to a circular system, right? Where you can feed it back in, and there's very little carbon footprint, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's talking about that. I mean, that's pretty open-ended, but in general, I think in general, that, part of my process isn't 100% circular. I do take the scraps and I do try to reuse them as much as I can. I do try to strip it down and reuse it and things like that. But in general, the material base that I work off of is not that great for the environment, right? It's not one of those things that you're gonna be able to, grow vegetables with later or anything like that, right? So
that's the nature of the beast that we've grown up with. Yeah, it's a way to tackle it. Well, I have a million other things.
I'm not sure if I answered his question.
I think he just wanted you to talk about what that meant for you, and to me, it's we're talking so much about this type of stuff, things that last, things that you can reuse again and snap apart and snap to a new piece and whatnot. We've never created throwaway products. That's just not, like, we grew up in this, performance outdoor realm, which is about creating things that, have lifetime warranties and last and whatnot and get repaired. And so I think that's just kind of ingrained in us, but we also do work with things that are, technologically layered up and a lot of things that are toxic, and we're trying to help change that. So in the ways, but by creating things that people want to keep and love and hang on to, is the first place to be, that also just lasts, and whatnot. So I think it's about that. I have a million things I'd love to still talk with you about. I knew this would happen in our hour, but we're up. And I just wanted to give you one last chance if there's anything else you wanted to share about, for design in the future, COVID and beyond, and what you see for other designers as a pathway forward. Last words.
For me, I think in general, like, if you're at a brand or you're at a company where you don't feel like you're expressing yourself, don't always feel like you're in a rut, or there's no way out. Like, I think in general there's that balance, right? You do need to keep the lights on. Business is business sometimes, But at the end of the day, no one could ever really take that creativity away from you, and you can work on things on your own, and you can create things on your own. You don't
Yeah.
need this massive infrastructure behind you to really make product happen, right? And so I think in general, where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, and you'll learn, the first piece that you decide you want to build or make yourself, or even manufacture yourself, might not be perfect, but at the end of the day, through the process, you're gonna figure it out. I mean, that's what creatives do, right? We're gonna always rise to the top and figure these things out. So
Yeah.
um, I think in general, it's just that. It's like you can do everything on your own for sure if you need to. That's what
Yeah.
I would leave with
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah.
That's great. That's how I know you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's been really great to talk to you. I
Yeah.
actually feel like I could talk to you for another hour or two.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
But
the time did fly, right? I was
yeah,
nervous about
totally.
this whole thing, and I'm like, I don't really. This is you're able to make this so comfortable and easy. So
Yeah. Well,
you're amazing at this. I don't know how you do it.
oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Well, we've always had a really great time talking together, at work and sharing all the nerdy stuff that we love about doing. So this kind of stuff's easy to talk about, and I really enjoy it. So we're getting some great messages from folks. I just wanted to say to everybody, if you hit the three dots on the chat, you can save the chat for the comments and whatnot. We just got a message from John Knight and some folks out there and Neil. And I'm
John
really glad
Knight,
to.
what's up?
I know, I know. So it's really great to see everyone. I've just had a wonderful time talking with you, John, and we'll talk again absolutely soon. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here and do this. So,
I appreciate it. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
All right. I'm going to
All
sign
right.
off. Thank you to everybody. And yeah, save the chat and sign up for the YouTube channel. And we will have this up at the end of the week. So thank you all and have a great rest of the day, the evening, wherever you are. All right. Bye-bye.